He walked with a permanent limp from injuries suffered as a young man. He was born into a minor tribal family with no real claim to power. And within a few decades, he had built an empire soaked in more blood than almost any conqueror before him, marking his victories with towers built entirely from human skulls. This is the story of Tamerlane. Before we continue, if you're enjoying these deep dives into history, please follow our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Honestly, one subscribe from you could change how far we're able to take this channel, and it truly motivates us to keep researching and making better videos for you. It costs you nothing, just a couple of seconds, so please do hit that subscribe button. It truly means a lot to us. Now, let's step back into Central Asia, into the 14th century. Tamerlane was born in 1336 near the city of Shahrisabz, in what is now modern Uzbekistan, into a minor noble family belonging to the Balas tribe, a Turkic-Mongol clan with no real claim to any significant royal lineage or established political power. As a young man, Tamerlane reportedly suffered serious injuries to his right leg and right arm, most likely during a raid or skirmish, injuries that left him with a permanent limp throughout the rest of his life, a limp that later gave rise to his own famous name. Persian chroniclers began calling him Timur-e-Lang, meaning Timur the Lame, a name that Europeans eventually translated and shortened into Tamerlane, a title he carried with him from a relatively obscure beginning to eventual world-shaking conquest. Central Asia during this era was a fractured, chaotic landscape, with the once mighty Mongol Empire long since splintered into competing khanates, each ruled by rival descendants of Genghis Khan, all fighting each other for territory and dominance. Tamerlane began his rise not as a supreme ruler in his own right, but as a skilled military commander and opportunist, serving various local rulers while carefully building his own personal power base through a series of shifting alliances and betrayals. Through remarkable political cunning and demonstrated battlefield skill, Tamerlane steadily eliminated rivals and absorbed their followers, until by 1370 he had established himself as the sole ruler of the Chagatai Khanate, based in the city of Samarkand. Unlike Genghis Khan, Tamerlane never actually claimed the title of Khan himself, since he lacked direct descent from the great Khan's bloodline. Instead, he ruled as an emir while installing puppet Khans to provide his rule with a veneer of legitimate authority. This clever arrangement allowed Tamerlane to wield absolute authority throughout his growing domain, while technically respecting the traditional expectation that only Genghis Khan's direct descendants could formally claim the imperial title itself. With Samarkand firmly established as his capital, Tamerlane began transforming the city into a magnificent showcase of his growing wealth and power, commissioning grand mosques, palaces, and monuments that would come to define the city for centuries afterward. It was through military conquest, not architecture, that Tamerlane would carve his name permanently into history, launching a series of brutal campaigns that would eventually stretch from India in the east to the Mediterranean coast in the west. His campaigns throughout Persia proved devastating, with city after city facing his armies, and those that resisted paying an especially brutal price for their defiance, a pattern that would repeat itself throughout his entire remarkable military career. When the city of Isfahan initially surrendered peacefully, but later rebelled against Tamerlane's tax collectors, killing them in a sudden uprising, his response proved horrifying, ordering a massacre that historians estimate claimed tens of thousands of lives. Following this massacre, Tamerlane ordered his soldiers to construct towers built entirely from the skulls of the dead, a chilling practice he would repeat throughout numerous campaigns, specifically to terrify future opponents into surrendering without resistance. These horrifying monuments, sometimes containing tens of thousands of individual skulls, served a specific strategic purpose, spreading terror ahead of his advancing armies and convincing subsequent cities that surrender was preferable to resistance. Tamerlane's campaigns throughout the 1380s and 1390s expanded his empire dramatically, conquering Persia, parts of Iraq, the Caucasus region, and eventually launching a devastating invasion into the Delhi Sultanate in northern India. In 1398, Tamerlane's forces crossed into India and captured Delhi itself, a campaign that resulted in staggering casualties, with some historical estimates suggesting the death toll during this particular invasion reached hundreds of thousands of people. Contemporary chroniclers described Delhi's streets running with blood, and the city's magnificent wealth, accumulated over centuries, was systematically looted and transported back towards Samarkand, further enriching Tamerlane's already substantial imperial treasury. Following his devastating Indian campaign, Tamerlane turned his considerable military attention westward, launching invasions against the Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt and Syria, capturing significant cities, including Aleppo and Damascus, through brutal, decisive military action. His conquest of Damascus proved particularly notable, as Tamerlane spared the city's renowned scholars and craftsmen from the general slaughter, instead transporting them back to Samarkand specifically to help beautify and develop his own magnificent capital city. This pattern reveals something important about Tamerlane's broader approach to conquest. He was simultaneously capable of horrifying brutality against resistant populations, while also demonstrating real appreciation for art, scholarship, and architectural achievement. Perhaps his most consequential military campaign came in 1402, when Tamerlane's forces confronted the powerful Ottoman Empire under Sultan Bayezid at the decisive Battle of Ankara, one of history's most significant military confrontations. Tamerlane achieved a stunning victory at this battle, decisively defeating the previously unbeatable Ottoman forces and capturing Sultan Bayezid himself, an event that sent shockwaves throughout the entire Islamic world and considerably delayed Ottoman expansion for decades. According to popular legend, Tamerlane kept the captured sultan in an iron cage, displaying him as a humiliating trophy throughout his subsequent travels, though historians today debate whether this particular detail reflects literal fact or later dramatic embellishment. Regardless of this specific detail's accuracy, the defeat of Bayezid's forces at Ankara proved historically significant, temporarily halting the previously unstoppable Ottoman advance into Europe and altering the broader trajectory of Middle Eastern and European history for decades. By the early 1400s, Tamerlane's empire stretched across an enormous territory, encompassing Central Asia, Persia, parts of India, and significant portions of the Middle East, rivaling in scale the earlier conquests of Genghis Khan himself. Despite this staggering territorial achievement, Tamerlane's ambitions remained unsatisfied, and in 1404, at nearly 70 years old, he began planning his most ambitious campaign yet, an invasion of Ming Dynasty China. This planned invasion represented an extraordinary undertaking given his advanced age, requiring the mobilization of a massive army to march thousands of miles eastward through harsh winter conditions toward one of the world's most powerful remaining empires. In January 1405, while en route toward China with his assembled forces, Tamerlane fell seriously ill, likely from a fever, and died near the city of Otrar, bringing his remarkable brutal conquering career to its sudden, unexpected conclusion. His death prevented what might have become one of history's most consequential military confrontations, as historians continue debating what might have happened had this remarkable, ruthless conqueror actually reached and engaged Ming China's formidable defenses. Following Tamerlane's death, his vast empire began fragmenting almost immediately as his sons and grandsons fought bitterly among themselves for control over the various territories he had conquered throughout his remarkable, brutal career. Despite this political fragmentation, Tamerlane's dynasty, known as the Timurids, continued ruling various portions of Central Asia and Persia for generations afterward, and one particular descendant would eventually achieve remarkable historical significance of his own. That descendant, Babur, would eventually travel south into India and establish the Mughal Empire, one of history's most magnificent and culturally significant dynasties. Meaning Tamerlane's bloodline shaped the subcontinent's history for centuries beyond his own lifetime. Historians today estimate that Tamerlane's military campaigns resulted in the deaths of somewhere between 17 and 20 million people, making him one of history's deadliest conquerors, his violent legacy standing alongside his considerable achievements in architecture and culture. Thanks so much for watching. If this incredible and brutal story of ambition and conquest surprised you, please leave a comment below, follow our Facebook page, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your subscribe genuinely helps us keep telling stories like this one. Until next time, take care.